Okay, hello everybody, welcome again. My name's Graham Canning from People-Centered Excellence, and this is a follow-up recording to the recent webinar we did with our guest speaker, our colleague and friend, DJ Duarte. Hi DJ.
Hey, thanks Graham. Like to be back here. Good to see you.
I'm joined by DJ and my People-Centered Excellence colleague, Mike Denison. Hi Mike.
Hi everybody, good to be back.
So our challenge today is to answer as many of your questions and discuss your comments and ideas from the several mini Q&A sessions that we had following the first webinar last week. So we've got lots of questions to get through. So without further ado, we'll get into those. So, ready, guys?
Yes.
Ready.
Okay, on to our first question then, and that came from Gavin, and he was saying one of the challenges that he saw was that organisation structures were based on geography, not on value streams or virtual working. So, what do you think about that as a challenge?
Well, I think that is a great way to sort of segue into answering all of these questions from the standpoint of globalization. Yeah? So the deglobalization or the actual supply chains that are across the world. I think geography is our major constraint in us being able to maximize our value streams and our value chain. So what I would say here is that the value stream and the value chain can be anywhere in the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a very, precise location. You're only working through this kind of organization. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we can see it. And that's where most of the organizations, they don't have the capability right now to see into their supply chains. So I wouldn't put much emphasis around the geography as much as I would put it on visualization of the supply chain, because I think that's where everybody will benefit the most from. Yeah.
Okay.
What's your thoughts, Mike?
I think there's another side to, well, there's an extension to that. Is traditionally, yeah, you're right, it has been based on geography, because of course most organizations have set themselves up in the region of where their businesses started, and then they've moved as they've required to look for ways of cutting costs and everything else. But another element is the whole idea of developing communities of practice. So, if you have a community of practice which is about looking into your supply chain, that doesn't really necessarily be identified as geographical. It can be anywhere in the world. If you're looking for improvements, you can have communities of practice who are working remotely in this type of forum where we can have debates and discussion. You might be applying the improvements actually in the place where the physical things are happening. But the debate and the discussion and the evolution can happening through communities of practice. This has been happening in the digital world for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Microsoft, Amazon, and all those, they operate communities of practice to actually manage their business. Why can't manufacturing, or why can't some of the service industry? I think it's a limited thinking to think that it's geographical personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's kind of like an accepted bit of wisdom, isn't it? That because of geography, visibility is a lot worse. Therefore, it's much more difficult to manage because you haven't got that finger on the pulse or that responsiveness. But actually, with the advances in modern technology, it's possible that you could have some of that, right?
Yep. Absolutely. DJ, you expand on that, because now the capability to look inside a business and truly understand what's going on in the value chain, it's huge. The potential is huge, and most organizations aren't capitalizing on that.
I totally agree, because I have a friend that's in the industry. He basically wrote a wonderful book called Walking the Invisible Gemba. You can't be physically everywhere anymore. But the goal is that you still have to have that communication, that talent discussion, and in order to maximize what's ever in your value stream or value chain. So it still has to happen, and it's not difficult. You just got to take your time and organize in a different way. Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting follow-on to that in terms of what we've just been talking about. And again, just to finish off Gavin's point, and thank you for that, Gavin, the lack of knowledge and competence around digital solutions and having a kind of defensive and resistive mindset to change is going to be a problem, isn't it, for some people?
Yeah, I would probably go with, even for myself, that it's going to be a challenge, because I'm not defensive against it, but I have a thought process that says if you can do it with your hands and you can change your mindset, then the digital solution will be more valuable to you. So it's about getting the habit of doing it the right way that allows you to gain more knowledge. It allows you to be more confident than with a selected solution, right? Because there's so many out there, and we can't overcomplicate it. We have to simplify it. That's the key. Simplification of complexity. That's the key.
And I think there's a really interesting one for me about that in terms of the, you can't automate the thinking. You know, the thinking still has to be there in terms of that mindset. Don't let the tool do all that for you. Use the tool to actually help you get that visibility, but the thinking still has to be there to support it in terms of the way that you question things and your approach still has to be there, doesn't it?
Yes. And you know, Graham, before you go on, that's one of the things that one of my senseis told me. You know, memorize before you customize. Do it the way it's designed.
Yes.
Then you can add in all of this other digital capabilities of it, because that's the power behind it. Yeah. So that's good.
Perfect. Okay, great. We're off and running with a great start. Bafana asks a really good question. Well, actually more of a point around leadership. You know, one of the issues is leadership have a default response to challenge. They don't think of the business as a system, you know, so they're looking at it from a very, very narrow perspective. And they don't think value streams. And let's cover that one first, because it does go on. But what do you think about that? About leaders not seeing their businesses from a system thinking perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take this. I'll start off with this, Mike, and you can add to it, I guess. I would say that when you really think about the leaders not being able to see things as a system, that says something already about the traditional mindset that they're in. It's not a lean mindset automatically. So in my efforts across the globe, that's the number one thing that we try to change. There's 12 distinct mindset challenges that we try to influence through what we call the 5 drivers, if you may, of doing lean growth, leadership growth, the role of a leader, to be able to visualize that. So you want to pick up on that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the whole idea of looking at something as a system, a business has inputs and outputs, it has resources and it has controls. And one of the big elements of that is one of those controls or resources is actually leadership and how leaders engage with their people. DJ talked about the 5 drivers. This is something that we've been working on for a number of years now, around those 5 drivers that enable a continuous improvement culture. The drivers of, you know, clear direction, D for direction, demonstration, being a role model leader, developing your people and developing yourself, whether it's through questions or engagement or challenging people, putting some healthy tension into the business, and then discovery through the scientific method, using experiments to actually learn about, you know, how you solve problems and how you put improvements in place, and then delivering the results, but delivering it through your people by giving them and creating the environment for them to succeed in. So I think a big part of this is leaders' ability to recognize that they are part of that system, and that if they don't engage in that as a system, then they themselves will create weakness within their own business.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wondered when you're talking about that, just because it's not for us to give leaders an easy ride at all, but I do wonder in some cases whether leaders are very driven, as we all are, by the way that we're measured. And often that means that people tend to take sort of local, short-term views rather than seeing it as a system to be developed in that holistic way you were describing, Mike. So measurement can drive the wrong behavior, right?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, we're often measured by the results, meaning the outputs that we get, which are goal focused. Whereas in reality, we all know that good results come from good process. So we need to be teaching people to measure much more the process the progress that we're making towards things, so it becomes habitual rather than just getting the results or achieving the goals. Because if you don't get the goals 1 year, all it means is that your process wasn't mature enough to achieve that.
Exactly.
But if you mature your process, the next year you will definitely hit your goals. And that's a weakness. It's a very short-term thinking in my view.
And I'd like to capitalize on that as well, because the very first leadership paradigm that we switch is going from short-term thinking to long-term thinking. And it's about saying, listen, it's not quarter to quarter like this continues on to say about the investments. It's more of doing what Toyota is doing, investing in the people and the system, because they know it's a long-term perspective they're having, not this short-term COVID kind of thing that will pass as well.
Right. I want to just give a name check to Bafana, because he goes on to talk about investors having a loud voice in times of crisis, and it becomes all about investment returns, which is kind of understandable where we are. In some cases, it's about survival. And then Roddy goes on to talk about bean counters, his term, not ours, who only look at the numbers and instigate cuts to balance the books, instead of looking at more creative solutions to survive the short term and provide, a foundation for building for the future. So thanks to those comments, guys. I mean, do you want to come back on any of that? I mean, that kind of resonates with what we've just been talking about in the last couple of minutes.
I really do, because in my estimation, the current way that accounting is done is not lean. And I think Mike talked about this earlier. They're thinking about the past, what's already been done. They're not looking at real data now. They're not looking at what's, what we call leading indicators, right? What potentially could happen. And when it's connected to a value stream or a value chain, you are seeing the data differently. I'll give you a great example. There's a guy in Japan here. His name is Kawada-san, and he has this whole program. He's trying to get the lean accounting world, or the accounting world, to drive lean thinking, and that is called supply chain cash conversion cycle. It includes it all. And when you look at Toyota comparatively to all the other automotive dealers or any manufacturing or service entity from an entire supply chain, you start to realize how long it takes to really get that cash. It's not as quick as you think. It's in the hundreds of days. It's 150, 130 days. And that's what needs to change, because you got to look at it from that value stream component in a system. And that's the system that needs to change with regards to the people that we're going to go into. Help them.
Yeah, agreed.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Let's move on a little bit to some of the people development and the sort of the leadership decision making as part of this. Christian asked a question about it being is it a good time for training and retraining on quality and continuous improvement? Obviously, the challenge is how you do that. If everyone's worried about getting infected by corona, how can you train in the traditional way? And is that going to be a barrier? What are your thoughts, guys?
Mike, I think you should run with this, because you nailed it earlier. So why don't you share that?
So I think definitely to me training should never stop, and I think it must be frustrating for some organizations who feel that at this particular point in time, with everything that's going on, that they've had to cut their training budgets, they've had to reduce, and that's because traditionally we think of training as being people in a workshop, people in an office, or people in a classroom, but real training happens on the job. Real training happens on the job, and that's my background from Toyota. It was all on the job training, on the job learning, actually working through problems, working through improvement projects to drive the changes that we wanted to see. However, even in this day and age, I think you can train now even with what's going on. I've commuted some of my training approach with an existing client, and now I'm delivering my training. Instead of delivering 1 day or 2 day sessions, I'm delivering them in 2-hour chunks that are spread over 2 or 3 weeks. And the fortunate thing about that allows me to actually set them tasks that they can go and practice and then we can reflect back on it in the second or third or fourth session. So I think training is one of those things that has to continue. I would like to think of it much more as a development than the word training, personally. And I think we need to think about a development process that engages with our staff in a means that allows us to do it now, that allows them to apply that back into the business. And you can do that, and it can be very interactive. You know, we have breakout rooms, we have conversations, we have video coaching, we have whiteboard discussions, and people are contributing into it. So I believe that training doesn't have to stop at all.
I totally agree with that statement. In fact, again, I go by the philosophy of teach, do, learn. So I don't call it training, because it's more of a working engagement where you're actually making changes in your business while you're learning what to do. Yeah. So it's an experiential type of learning process. And then in the end, you actually transform. But if you were to cut that at a certain time, like during these challenging pandemic type eras, that hurts you transforming your organization. That's gonna just push it out longer. So the goal is to continue doing it. In fact, I'm picking up businesses right now that are saying, please help me now. This is the perfect time to do it, because I really can't do much else with my supply chain, but I can build the skills of my employees and the processes.
I really like that reframing of it in terms of training, which we all think is kind of like time away from the job. You know, where you go on a 4 or 5 day workshop somewhere, you go to a hotel, and you get away from the Gemba and all the rest of it. And actually, this crisis has kind of forced us to do a little bit more of what Toyota do, which is training on the shop floor. Absolutely an integral part of the job. It's at the Gemba and all the rest of it, but doing it every day and doing it on really, really short cycles. So Mike's point about saying, I've got a 1 hour or 2 hour session, and then they go away and practice it before we come back to the next one. Actually, it's probably more like how Toyota and similar companies did Kaizen in the first place, and then of course when the Sensei's had to go over to the States and pay for a flight, they'd have to go over there for a week, so that became a blitz event. They never did blitz events in their own factories to begin with, but it was really because they were batching it up to get value out of the visit. So we're almost doing the same with training, aren't we?
I would love to just add a note to that. I was just having a call with an ex, actually he's become one of my joint ventures as a partner, but he shared with me a nomoragram. And what that is that there was a Japanese sensei that would come over 3 or 4 times a year for 1 week. But then he would create this A3 for the next gap so that everybody knew these are the things you have to work on. So even though he wasn't there physically, they had a plan, a structure of what to do. And this is what it's about. It's every day, every week, growing with it. It's not about just doing it once a quarter. Yeah.
And so don't you think that's a mindset thing, DJ? The whole idea of your mindset is training is a cost. Your mindset is how can I cut costs? But if your mindset is like Toyota's, build people to build cars, or your mindset is grow the capability of my people so that they can grow the capability of my business, then you're going to be thinking about how do I continue to grow? So whatever it is, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's on the job or whether it's through projects or whether it's through solving problems, you are continuously thinking about how do I grow and develop the capability of my people? Because it's those people that are going to take the business forward.
And that's the uniqueness that I think this question sort of brings out. Is it a good time? The answer is yes, absolutely. There's never been a better time, okay? But the other thing is, and I'll go back to what Mike was saying, there's a reason why Toyota has good thinking, good products, because they are constantly pushing their people to be in a thinking people system, not a training people system. It is, I'm always thinking about what else can I solve, like Mike was sharing. What problems do I got to solve? What are the issues that I'm experiencing? Where is it upstream? Where is it downstream? What am I doing for others? So it's all those coming together. So that's why it's a true thinking people system. Good.
Fantastic. Okay, right. Let's move on to the next one, which is a little bit. It's still around people, really, and this is about how we, how as leaders, we make sure that people who are coming back to work following the pandemic are sort of mentally in the right state of mind. So Gemma asks about the challenge of individuals, departments, and teams recovering emotionally from the pandemic. Making sure that people are comfortable going back into the workplace, onto the shop floor, back to the office, so that they're in the right mental frame of mind for the learning. Yeah, so there's a bit of that. And then I'm going to throw another one in. We'll try and answer them both at the same time. How does a leader ensure that when they've got people who are perhaps working remotely, they practice the good leadership in terms of providing those people with support and opportunities for growth? So happy to take that one, DJ?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tackle this one a little bit differently, okay? I just like to first say that every time you become a leader, there's a different level of responsibility you have, okay? So the way Toyota does it, and as we described earlier, is they teach you this through TWI, through the practices. But then they also take you off-site to make sure you know that you're a leader now. You're no longer this employee. You can't be thinking like an employee. You got to be thinking of the system that you're in. So as a team leader, you have a small system of about 5 to 8 people you manage. But as a group leader, you have 5 or 6 team leaders that you're managing with all those people underneath it as well. So it's a different level of thinking, and therefore your goal is to be emotionally attuned to them. So that's why you have the skills matrices. That's why you have the EQ matrices that are on the shop floor. How am I feeling today? Because my role as a leader is to make sure that I'm helping you get better every day in every way. And so I usually put up on the board all the things a team leader has to do or a group leader has to do. And then I tell the people that are going through this Gemba core engagement to change their mindsets and their behaviors, how many of them do you do? And they start going down. Check. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. And they get about halfway down and they go, I don't do that. And then I don't do that. And things like train your people, that leader that, ask 5 whys, the ability to say, plan slowly, act quickly. All of these things start to come out. And the last one is, how much time during the month do you spend with your team outside of work? Whether it's doing some bowling tournament, whether it's, having a team session to talk about problems. This is what a leader needs to do. And that means, again, going back to the root, asking really good questions. Your ability to truly empathize with people and understand them emotionally and work through them. And the story that I like to share with people when they come to visit Japan's Toyotas with my lean immersion tours, is I said, there was an employee that spent 4 years in Toyota, and he went to his boss and said, this year, I want to travel across Europe on a bicycle. But that requires that I have to give up my work. This is important to me. The leader says, if it's important to you, then it's got to be important to me. And so let's work out a plan how we can get you your leave to be able to travel throughout Europe for 4 months. Is that enough time? And they were like, yes. So that means when you come back, you will have to do this much time, and then we'll give you just this much leave during every year. So they broke it up over 5 or 6 years so that he could have that experience. And now this person's a lifelong employee because he was emotionally attuned to what that person tried to achieve. Yeah. Wow. So it's not just work. It's not just work. Yeah.
Your experiences with this, Mike?
Well, I was thinking, as DJ was saying that, I was thinking there's a term that often gets used, and it's people are your greatest assets. But I don't like that term, because what do most businesses do with their assets? They sweat them. Sweat them. An asset is not a human being. It's a non-meaningful thing. It's something that doesn't have, a human being, a person is a thinking, feeling, creative person who has habits. And that means that a leader has a responsibility for drawing out the very best And so my whole ethos that I learned in Toyota, that I constantly coach and support, is when you see a person, don't look at them in terms of their performance, look at them in terms of their potential. When you focus on somebody in terms of their potential, you look in terms of how you can grow them. That's a very different approach from looking at someone as an asset. And I know why people have that statement. It's probably a little bit, I'm using it a little bit out of context, but the concept is a lot of people don't see their people. A lot of organizations and some leaders don't see their people in terms of what they could actually do. They see them in terms of their limitations, and that's the wrong way to look at it. Because if somebody has limitations, we've probably created it in them by developing the way that they do things, which means they have beliefs.
The system, the processes, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and it's the whole idea of caring. You know, when you're a leader in these type of organizations, you care for your employees, which means then you think of them as somebody who's important, and you want to know what's important to them, just in the way that DJ said. You want to know how they think, what's important to them, how they engage with their work environment. What can we do that creates a good working environment for them to perform and succeed in what they do?
Yeah.
So I think it's just a different perspective.
The TWI experience talks about positioning the learner so that they're in the right frame of mind to be taught, and that's often glossed over, isn't it? In terms of going, are you okay? Right, okay, and then off we go. But actually, that's quite a profound thing to say. Are you genuinely in the right frame of mind to be taught? Yeah, because if you're not, there's something going on in your background. Actually, today is not the right day to do that. Yeah, so that I think that's some of the things about people coming back to work and not kind of overwhelming them and inundating with this. Let's make sure that they're in the right frame of mind first before we move on to say, okay, this is a challenge. This is what we've got to do to sort of develop our capabilities to meet that challenge.
Don't forget that this is a completely different debate, and I'll just make the statements and then we'll probably move on. But the whole of our education system is based on traditional ways of educating. It's really about creating people who are capable of going into factories and workplaces. It's not really truly about developing the potential of people, which means that we have to get people in a classroom and we force feed them the same information in the same way. It's changing somewhat, but that's a whole education thing. Well, guess what? Businesses have took their lead from education in the way that they teach. So they think there has to be in a classroom and it has to be this way. So I think there's a lot more to it than that. Yeah. Real learning happens when you are in an environment that you respect the person who's helping you, and there's trust within that framework, and you've got to start to build that, and then you can develop the capability of somebody.
Yeah, and I'd like to just go
DJ.
What Graham was sharing is the bottom line is, yes, they have to be in the right frame, but did you know that the flip side to that card of those four is also for the teacher? Are they in the right mindset? So it's got to be both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can't help someone learn at the Gemba, you need to go get an understanding of the best way to do that, because that's the true, most powerful way to grab knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic, guys. Any kind of final comments and thoughts? I think we've pretty much run through most of the questions that were left outstanding from the first webinar. So thank you for that. I think there's some really good insight there. But any final thoughts just to kind of round this off?
Well, I would just add that there was a reason I selected these three for the 3 steps of a formula for success with Lean. And that is, most organizations cherry pick the strategy for trying to do optimization. They just do where their pain points are at. Or their digital solutions, they try to get the latest, greatest without knowing how it's going to really influence their entire value chain. And then the last piece is they cut costs on training. So that's why I specifically picked these, because these are the 3 pillars, if you may, to making sure people uphold a lean management system. It's not all the digitalization, but you got to get everybody involved in doing it. And so that's what I would leave the webinar here with. Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, I think DJ's covered it. The only one last point that I would say is looking at the inverted organization. You know, a real true lean organization is built on the fundamental principles that came from total quality management of the 1960s, which obviously harks back to Deming and what he did with the Japanese in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that's the whole idea of you fit the people, because they are the ones who are closest to your customer. And so the leadership role is about enabling those people to perform and succeed. And so the whole of your business management systems have to fit into that, whether it be a digitalized system or whether it be something like an and-on system that gives you immediate response to when people have an issue, whether it be a feedback system, whether it be a built-in quality system. They're all systems which are designed to support the people to succeed in what they do. And then the leader's role is to enable that to happen. You know, the leader's role is to be out there with the people as much as possible, enabling them to perform. Not doing it for them, asking the questions, developing capability.
Oh, he popped off. I guess he unplugged himself.
I guess he unplugged himself. He'll probably join us again in a moment.
Yeah.
That was a good conversation. I definitely believe that there is real value in posing half a dozen questions out to the business world out there, selecting 3 and then just having a debate around it.
Yeah, because, you know, when you really think of what is a lean leader, and now when I say lean, I'm talking, here's TPS, there's lean, and then there's lean 4.0. It's just drifting further away from TPS. I'm talking about the TPS lean leader. Yeah. It really has to do with bringing people together. It's designed around that. Yeah. So if you're not educating yourself about your system, you're not educating others about that system, and you're not trying to improve that system, you're probably lagging behind. You know? So that's what a leader's there to do. And all that emotional baggage that comes with being a leader doesn't go away.
No, absolutely.
You just now need to harness the energy that you bring so that other people get the benefit from you leading in that spotlight. And the thing about Toyota, as you know, Mike, they take the best leaders and the best workers out of the process. And they move them to different aspects of the business. Because they want to see who else will rise up. I think
that's a really powerful point, actually, DJ. That it's a shame we didn't have a question around it, Graham. What DJ's just been saying is think of Toyota. Toyota takes the best people out of the process because they want those people to help develop the capability of the organization, whereas lots of people feel that they need the best in the process because they don't have confidence. They think it's the people, those leaders, that make the system work. It's not.
And it's the process and system that
systems that make it work. You know, so I think that's a really powerful point.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll add it in because that's part of our discussions, and the fact that we've kind of opened that up to some thinking and shared some new ideas. That's absolutely fantastic. So apologies for just disappearing there. I'm back just in time to wrap up the session. We won't go into the details, but I just want to say a massive thank you again to DJ for being our guest on these 2 webinars.
Thank you, Graham.
Superb. So thank you for that. Thanks again, Mike. DJ, where can people find you? And you know, if they want to pick up a little bit more, connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I think the easiest way is you can go on to Twitter, and it's at DJ Duarte 10, or you can go into makotoflowlimited.com and see my email there and all my contact information. So that's the easiest.
Perfect. I'd recommend
that. I'd be more glad to share more.
Okay, that's great. So it just remains for me to say thank you to everybody. Stay tuned to our LinkedIn on People-Centered Excellence. There'll be more of this kind of thing to come, hopefully, in the next few weeks. And thanks again to everybody, and stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Take care.